I just heard a tragic story that made me cry. For a long time. Grandpa had two sons. My dad and uncle. They said uncle was brave and kind before he joined the army, but after he came back, he changed. The story started from the year when uncle was 18, because grandpa was sick. My dad had to take over the family business. He married my mom soon after, had me and my sister, but dad's business was not doing well. He had to borrow money from many people. He was always stressed and angry. He treated mom poorly when I was 5 and my sister was 3. Dad disappeared with a huge debt. Dad left, and we had no income. Grandma was heartbroken and died soon after. Only grandpa and uncle were left to take care of us. Uncle was a soldier. He fought in many battles and got wounded several times. He was awarded many medals, but he also suffered from PTSD. He had nightmares and flashbacks. He was always restless and anxious. He rarely talked to anyone except for me and my sister, no matter what we did. He never scolded us or hit us. We were always dirty and hungry. Uncle patiently washed us and fed us. He used his meager pension to buy us books, snacks, and toys in the village. Fatherless and motherless children were often looked down upon and bullied. Others laughed at him. Uncle always ignored them, but he couldn't stand us being hurt by anyone. He would confront the bullies and teach them a lesson. He said, if you don't respect yourself, no one will respect you. He was strong and fierce. No one dared to mess with him in the village. When it was time for us to get married, Grandpa tried to find a match for Uncle many times, but Uncle refused to meet anyone. No matter how Grandpa begged or threatened him, he said one sentence: if this home can't accommodate me, I will take Xiao Qiang and Xiao Feng away and live alone. Xiao Qiang is my sister. Xiao Feng is me. Uncle didn't say it, but we all knew. All these years, Uncle blamed himself for not being able to save Dad from his trouble. He felt guilty for not being there for Mom when she died of illness. He tried to make up for their absence by taking care of us, but every time we mentioned Dad or Mom's name, Uncle would turn away and leave. Every year on Mom's death anniversary, the whole family would go to her grave, but Uncle never joined us. He hid far away. When he came back at night, his eyes were swollen like peaches. Uncle nurtured me and my sister. We always had better food and clothes than other kids. Of course, he also cared more about our education than other parents. There was a time when my sister was influenced by some bad kids in the village. She hated Uncle for being strict with her. She deliberately skipped school and didn't do her homework. Uncle tried to talk to her, but she ignored him. In the end, it was my sister's teacher who found her. One morning at 6 o'clock, when it was still dark, the teacher took my sister to his home field. There she saw Uncle, who was harvesting wheat. It was already cold in early autumn, but Uncle's thick clothes were already soaked with sweat. The teacher said, "You have been in school for 5 years. Your uncle has helped me harvest for 5 years. He can't be driven away." He said he has nothing else but this strength. He said even if he dies of exhaustion, he will let you get out of this sad place through studying. Go to the outside world. It was not until that day that my sister and I realized that every harvest season, Uncle would go to help the teacher's family before dawn. It was like this every year. The next day, my sister quietly harvested all the soybeans in our field by herself. She dried them under the sun. When Uncle came back at night, she was sitting in her room doing homework. Uncle smiled softly and touched her head gently. This touch made my sister cry. She wanted to hug Uncle, but she grabbed a pair of sandpaper like rough hands. Holding those hands, my sister cried silently and violently. From then on, my sister's grades were always among the best, and our grades were always average. When I was in junior high, Grandpa didn't want me to continue studying. He said Uncle had to support the family and pay for me and my sister. It was too hard for him. But Uncle insisted on letting me continue studying. He even spent a lot of money to hire a tutor for me. The tutor came every Saturday to tutor me. Uncle treated him with good food and good manners. He was arrogant to the whole world, but he was always humble and respectful in front of the teacher. He also gave him some rare mountain products that he picked. I felt sorry for those mountain products, sorry for the money he spent on the tutor, and more sorry for his hardship. I told Uncle I didn't want to study anymore. I wanted to stay at home with him. Uncle, who always agreed to my requests, only said one sentence. If she was alive, she would never let you stay in the countryside. Repeat our fate. That was the first time Uncle mentioned Mom in front of me. I sensed that year I passed the entrance exam and got into a key high school in the county. Uncle's burden became heavier. Once I learned that he was working on a construction site, my sister and I went to find him after school. On the dusty and muddy site, there was only one woman, Uncle. She had a pile of bricks on her shoulder that was as high as a small mountain. My sister and I ran up to her and tried to lift the bricks from the bottom to lighten her load. But we tried our best and the bricks didn't move at all. My sister and I looked at each other and said nothing. That was the day we really felt the weight of life. That day, Uncle took us to a restaurant after work, looking at the 2 dishes and 1 soup he ordered. My sister and I calculated how many bricks Uncle had to move for this meal. The chopsticks in our hands became very heavy at that moment. That day we watched Uncle's figure go away. My sister said to me, Xiao Feng, Uncle is like this. We have to study hard for that year of college entrance examination. My sister was admitted to a 985 university. The day we received the notice, we couldn't find Uncle anywhere. She came back at more than 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Her eyes were swollen like peaches. Obviously, she had cried. Uncle took us to Grandpa and Grandma's grave and Mom's grave to tell them the good news. In front of the grave, she said, Dad, Mom Xiao Qiang made us proud. Xiao Feng is also smart and diligent. I heard that after going to college, you can also study for master's degree, doctorate and postdoctoral degree. They can read as much as I can afford them. When I talk about them being so knowledgeable, I feel like I have endless strength in my body. My sister and I knew that Uncle's words were also for us to hear. When we wanted to tell Mom the news, Uncle didn't follow us. My sister and I looked sloppy. She waved her hand with red eyes. My sister said, Uncle, everyone knows it's not your fault. Mom died of illness because Dad left. You don't have to torture yourself with this thing anymore. Then Uncle cried all the way down the mountain. That cry was like squeezing for thousands of years. Amazing. After that day, Uncle was still a money basket, farming and working hard for 24 hours a day. Since my sister said that everyone knows it's not your fault, Uncle became much more cheerful. I will never forget when I helped him fill out the remittance form. I inadvertently looked back and saw him counting money. His mouth was full of eager smiles and his eyes were full of tenderness. When Mom died, I was only 3 years old and had almost no impression of motherly love. But at that moment in Uncle's eyes, what I saw was motherly love. Before, I always thought Uncle was a hot-tempered tomboy. But at that moment, I saw her softness and warmth. I wanted to hug her so much. Maybe in these years, Uncle had already become our mother after my sister. I also got into a key university in Hunan to reduce Uncle's burden. My sister worked part-time. While studying, she transferred all the living expenses that Uncle sent her to me. And I also started tutoring later. I went to do children's voice translation. I could not only support myself, but also supplement the family. When I went home in the summer of my sophomore year, I brought back 1,000 yuan. For Uncle, my sister also sent some money to Uncle. Seeing this money, Uncle cried. Tears rolled down her face. She said, "You can all make money by yourself. Now you don't need me anymore." I panicked and hurriedly said to her, "Uncle, we need you. We need you for the rest of our lives. We still want you to watch us and help us with our children after we get married." My words gave Uncle a new life goal. According to the villagers, there was a divorced man from a neighboring village who pursued Uncle for several years. He helped Uncle with work and bought her all kinds of household items. Everyone thought this man was reliable, but Uncle didn't. She returned everything he bought for her. She said to him, "I have to make money, buy a house for Xiao Qiang and Siu and Li City, and watch them grow up and have their own families. Then the task is completed." We all persuaded Uncle to think about her own life. We were all grown up and could support ourselves. Then Uncle said, "One sentence will shut us up," she said. graduate school, my sister went to a company in Beijing and was sent abroad for 2 years. When she came back, I also graduated from graduate school and went to Beijing. We rented a 3-bedroom and 1 living room apartment. The first thing we did after settling down was to pick up Uncle to Beijing. In the next month, we took Uncle to visit the mountains and rivers. She was so happy to take pictures. That was the happiest time in her life. We thought Uncle accepted our arrangement and was trying to adapt to Beijing's life. But who knew that after a month, she insisted on going back to her hometown, and no one could stop Uncle's decision. After returning home, my sister and I would send money to Uncle every month after we got paid. Although there was online banking at that time, we still insisted on going to the post office every month to remit money. Stroke by stroke, we wrote down the address of our hometown and Uncle's name, feeling the mood when she sent us money back then. On May 21, 2020, we received a call from our neighbor saying that Uncle fainted while doing farm work. We rushed back to our hometown. Waiting for us was the bad news of Uncle's late-stage liver cancer. We called Uncle from the county hospital to Beijing for re-examination and got the same result. She only left us 1 month's time. On the day of diagnosis, my sister and I cried bitterly. Kiki knelt in front of Uncle and shouted, "Mom." My sister choked and said, "Mom, you worked hard these years. You have been both Dad and Mom for me and my brother. I beg you to give me a chance to repay you well. Without you, how can my brother and I live?" That day, Uncle came too. That was the first time she came in front of us in her life. She took out 2 cards from under the pillow. The money you sent back is all in here. I also saved 10,000 for each of you. This is Uncle's last gift for you. Uncle is lucky. See, who would have thought that she didn't spend a penny of the money you sent back? She saved them in 2 accounts separately, one with my name and one with my sister's name. I don't remember how I took that card at that time. I just remember that I was so heartbroken that I couldn't breathe. What we took over were not 2 bank cards, but Uncle's life. Afterwards, the little aunt fell into a coma. She only woke up once in 3 days and tried her best to explain one thing. Since my mother passed away, every year on her deathbed, she would plant a pine tree by the water where my mother had jumped into the river. She said she would always remember. When she was a child, my mother used to take her to the reservoir to steal fish and then use the branches to make a fire to roast the fish. My mother often said to her, "I really envy those pine trees by the reservoir for living. It was so easy and comfortable." After my mother left, my little aunt would plant a pine tree near the reservoir every year. For so many years, she went there every time her mother died. Every tree she planted her own thoughts and regrets. Asked my brother and I to go back to our hometown to plant a tree every year on the day our mother died. On July 28th, my aunt left, and the last whispers she left were only heard by my brother and I 3 times. "Sister, I'm sorry." That was the first time we heard her call her sister, and it wasn't until she left that we understood some words. Just a single call would make our hearts tremble with pain. We were sisters, and we were aunts. This was my aunt's life, short and steadfast. After she left, our hearts had a gap. It is said that there will always be an echo if we cannot forget it. So, in the next life, let's meet earlier, and in the next life, let's protect you.